been 11 years since I joined my last syndicate. The last one that I joined was Mercer's Park, which was back home in Surrey when I used to live down in Kent. I sort of got caught in the trap of the day ticket fishing and the enjoyment of it and the competitive side of angling. I love fishing the day ticket waters. I love interacting with people, and I suppose technically now I could say, yeah, it's part of my job. And fishing back when I was on Mercer's was never something that I thought I would undertake as a career. And you know, the way that times move on and things evolve, and you know, the sort of the birth of social media, if you like, there's always that element of pressure that by fishing day tickets, you know, you're catching fish and you're constantly putting material up. And I sort of, like I say, got caught in a bit of a trap with it all. But now, nothing in my fishing's changed. My opinions against day tickets haven't changed. Nothing's changed, but I just felt that now's the right time. And you know, I moved from living in Kent to living down in Somerset, and yes, there are waters around Somerset, syndicate waters, that I would quite happily fish. I don't mind where I fish, what I fish for, but to find the right water, a water that suits me, I think was more sort of why I hadn't joined a syndicate. And I had my name down on the list for this for sort of 2 or 3 years. And yeah, you know, the ticket come up, and like I say, this won't be I'm going to stop fishing day ticket waters, because I absolutely love them. And like I said, I like going to places and interacting with different people, and you know, you meet people from all around the country fishing day tickets, but this is just somewhere that I can come as an escape. You know, I'm the only one on here today, and that's something that I've never had before. And I'll be honest with you, it has been slightly different. And I think what's been the hardest thing is that when you turn up, not getting out the van, rushing round, speaking to everyone, trying to find out when people are going. And again, that's something that I've been caught into, and that is part of the day ticket fishing scene. So joining a syndicate is somewhere that I can not necessarily fish all the time, but when I want to have a bit of an escape, a bit of me time, you know, a bit of time away, this is somewhere that I can come. And you know, I don't plan on dropping this ticket anytime soon. Even if I do get fortunate and catch the biggest one in here, it's somewhere that I can keep coming back to and know that when I come here, that I've got absolutely no stress. I'm not in competition with the anglers. I'm in no competition with the carp. I'm literally going to set up, have a takeaway as I normally would do, put the rods out. If it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, you know what? It's just a lovely place to be. And if it does rip off, the carp in here are just as stunning. When you turn up to a lake, obviously over the years and as social media evolves, more and more people begin to recognise you, and I've got quite a recognisable van, and you know, people are instantly turning around when you're driving along the track, and it's like you almost know what they're saying, but you don't want to sort of preempt what they're saying. And I think from the minute that I set up, there's always an element of pressure, not that I put on myself in terms of what I know I could potentially catch, but pressure that the minute you take a rod out your rod bag and you set it up and you make your first cast, you know you've got the whole lake looking at you. And again, it boils down to the competition side of it, which is why joining the syndicate has taken me away from the side of the competition against the anglers, and it's just me against the carp. Because fishing places like Linear, you know, you're seeing probably 250 different anglers, sometimes over the course of my stay if I'm there for 3 or 4 nights, and every one of them is effectively they're there to put you down and to knock you and to compare themselves against, say, me. And you know, I don't compare myself to anybody else. I just go fishing and I enjoy it. But when you're actually fishing there and you do get on the fish and you know you catch quite a lot of fish, you know that people are, I don't know, maybe they're putting you down. I don't know what they're saying, but you know, when they say, oh, you've done amazing, it's not like you go home from there thinking, you know, I showed the rest of the lake how to do it. You're basically just, I don't know, I suppose, yeah, effectively you know, you are a target, and when you are catching, yeah, people are there to shoot you down. But I never let it get to me. And I think if I was to let it get to me, then I wouldn't have carried on fishing them types of venues for as long as what I have, and for, you know, for how long I sort of want to continue fishing them. Because if you did, you wouldn't set up, because 9 times out of 10 you're setting up no further away than probably 10 or 15 yards away from someone. And if you look behind your bivvy, I don't know, when you're wrapping your rods up for argument's sake, you know, and you see people peering around their bivvy and looking, and you know, you let that pressure get to you, I wouldn't fish them types of places. So I suppose in a way, yeah, I do thrive off of the people putting me under pressure, but then at the same time I go to them places because I enjoy that type of fishing. You know, a carp's a carp to me. Looking across social media, you've got a lot of varying opinions of what's right, what's wrong, what counts, what doesn't count. I think for me, what counts is that you enjoy it. And the type of fishing that I do, the places that I go to, you know, when I'm loading that van prior to going, if I'm driving to the lake and all I can think about is getting to the lake, that is the buzz for me. Like I'm not bothered if I was to go to, you know, a commercial day ticket knowing that I'm probably going to catch a carp up to £15, or if I'm going to somewhere like Linear where you could catch anything. And again, a lot of people say, when you go to Linear, why would you concentrate your efforts on, say, somewhere like Brasenose 1? Now, when you join a syndicate, like I have done here, you normally give it 2-3 years, because in that syndicate will be a fish that you would like to catch. So in the one that I'm on at the minute, there's 3 or 4 fish that I'd dearly love to catch. Now, what I feel has happened in carp angling over the last few years is that people, fish, have got their reputation, not because of necessarily the fish that they catch, but because of the lakes that they fish and the names of the lakes that they fish. And once a lake is deemed a certain genre, like a Runswater, people dismiss what actually counts and what doesn't count. Now, there's 7 day ticket lakes on the Linear complex. If you was to put 3 years into each one of them to catch the fish that you've targeted, which, you know, it could take you longer, it might take you, you know, a shorter length of time. In my opinion, there's over 20 years of fishing there, and that's assuming that the fish that are coming through the ranks don't turn into your target fish. So somewhere like Brasenose 1, there's a lot of big carp in there, but a 40 pounder from Brasenose 1, in my opinion, should be no less creditable than a 40 pounder, say, from, I don't know, let's just for argument's sake, say the Car Park Lake, because you've still had to face that challenge to catch it. And, you know, one thing I've never done is I've never passed comment on what other people do and where other people fish, because quite frankly, I'm not bothered what they do. Yes, I look at certain carp and I'm not jealous of that person, I'm envious, because I think, oh, you know what, that's a fish that I would like to have in my album. But every angler out there has a different is under different circumstances, whether you've got your own business, family, children, you know, you're working 6-7 days a week and you just can't get the time. Everybody is different, and carp fishing shouldn't be about comparing yourself to the next person. It should be about you actually going and enjoying what you do. And, you know, like I said, if you can drive to the lake and you're buzzing to get there, and if you drive away from the lake and think, God, I can't wait to go back, then in my opinion, that's what works for you, not thinking, well, he's caught that fish, I really wanted to catch that fish. You know, I think what's been lost in the modern carp scene is the use of the word well done, and I think it's just replaced with a lot of excuses as to why said angler has caught fish, or why you haven't particularly caught very well, or you haven't done as well as what you should have done. And no one nowadays can just turn around with a genuine, you know what, mate, well done, you done well to catch that. Like I say, there's always a reason why that person has succeeded or caught what they've caught. Not in any way do I ever deem myself a big fish angler, or, you know, over the years I suppose I have been a match angler, but the venues that I fish, they've got a higher density of stock, and they've got a lot of what I would call a big carp. Like for me, a big carp is a 20 pounder, you know, and even though I don't even know how many 20 pound plus fish I've caught, but even if it was pouring hard with rain, you know, I find it very, very hard to put back a 20 pounder, because in my opinion, that's a big carp. And I've had over 600 UK 30s, and I caught a 40 the other week, which was my 30th one, and a couple of 50s. Now, does that make me a big fish angler? Like, I honestly don't know if it does or it doesn't. Like, I wouldn't start saying I'm a big fish angler because that's what I've caught. And like I say, I think it's just a title that people like to give themselves if they're targeting a specific fish. Now, the venues that I fish, I can't target a specific fish. The only way I can target a carp in there is to accumulate a number of bites and just basically play the numbers game. But, you know, I could come onto my syndicate now and say, right, I'm going to target this fish, and this fish. but I'd be fortunate enough to see them in the margin. And if I go around telling all the members that I'm targeting these fish and I end up catching them out the edge, does that make me a big fish angler because I've targeted them? Or if I'm fishing for them in the middle of the lake, Sod's Law says eventually over the time that I'm going to spend on here, I'm going to catch one. So I don't like to ever, I'd never label myself as anything. And like, I suppose people would say a match angler because I've done the BCAC, I've done the junior championships, and I have done a couple of matches abroad, but yeah, I don't know really what does constitute a big fish angler. And you know, I take my hat off to anyone that sits there and sort of singles out a big fish, but does that make him a big fish angler? I don't really know. Social media has definitely changed carp fishing, certainly for me. No, never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine that I would be able to sit here now and say fishing is my income, is my living. You know, it puts a roof over my family's head. And yeah, I do thank social media for that, because without having a social media platform, you know, it's only through how my sort of, I suppose you could say, popularity has grown on there that it progresses you further. But with social media obviously comes everyone's opinion, and you know, I have been subject to a fair bit of abuse over the years on there, and you know, I suppose a lot of people can see what it does to the higher end celebrities, and I sort of think they feel that as a carp angler you don't have any feelings, and sometimes you sit there and you think, you know, why would you write that? And when you are sat at home, I suppose, and you're not fishing, and I have done it a few times, you know, I've messaged the people who have, you know, sort of trolled me, if you like, and just said, you know, why? And you know, the standard answer is, oh, well, I don't know. And it's like, well, what do you mean you don't know? You know, you're a grown man, you've got children, you know, you're a role model to your children. Why would you write that? You know, would you want to be sat there and have your son or daughter come home from school or sat up in their bedroom knowing that they're getting trolled by someone who is, I suppose, a similar age or may have kids themselves? You know, it's not a nice thing to do, but you know, I've got quite thick skin. I can sort of see through. I think a lot of the comments that are aimed at me are just because, yeah, I have fished, you know, I suppose you could say the same places for the last few years. But again, what social media doesn't sort of show people is the fact that I actually carp fished before Facebook, before Instagram. And because I don't sit there and upload a throwback photograph every day of the week, people sort of think, well, you only had an Instagram account in, say, 2015, therefore that's the first time you picked up a fishing rod. And you know, the minute something goes on social media, that's gospel. But you know, I fished around a lot, and I'm very fortunate enough that my dad has always been into carp fishing. And you know, I know how hard it is, certainly nowadays, for the youngsters to get out and about, and how expensive everything is in the world. And I have always been very, very fortunate that my dad's been able to take me. So, you know, back in the day, you know, I was fishing Walthamstow, all of the mid-Kent waters, you know, waters that are steeped in history. But because I don't post about that now, people are just like, oh, it's only Tom who fishes on linear. But I can see why people do that, because, you know, people don't look past sort of the end of their own nose when they're browsing through social media. And, you know, unless something goes on Facebook or Instagram, you know, people take that as gospel. You know, if it's on Facebook, it must be true. And you know, a lot of it isn't true. But like I say, the comment side of things, you know, you can catch a few fish and people write nice comments and you're on top of the world, but then you'll be scrolling through and there'll be one comment that's like negative, and you just sort of sit there and think, why would you write that? Unfortunately, with the way of the world at the minute, you're never gonna stop that, because all the while people have got a keyboard in front of them, they're extremely dangerous. But one thing I've learned to do is sort of shrug it off and yeah, just carry on sort of doing what I'm doing, I suppose. The tactic that I've used for, do you know what, I can't even begin to think how long I've used it, has always been 3 rods on an area and focus all my attention on the area. Now, the pure reason for that is a lot of the waters that I fished, even back in the day when I was on, say, Chilham and, you know, going to Walthamstow, the swims are very tight, and I never really had the water to be able to explore and sort of chuck rods here, there and everywhere. Like, don't get me wrong, I have done that, and I've caught well doing it. But on any lake that I go to, I think there's no bigger thing in carp fishing than confidence, you know. And if you go to a new lake and an angler might tell you a certain way how they've caught a few fish, it's like brilliant, you know, that's worked for them, but that might not necessarily work for you. So I try to brush aside what everyone else is doing. And again, it's very easy to get caught in a trap of, say, walking around a lake and speaking to a few anglers who say, you know, I've catapulted sort of a kilo of boilies out and I've got stiff hinges over the top, and you know, they give off that hysteria again that they're like, you know, a big fish angler. But for me, big fish in a lake, and I don't care what anyone says, at some point in their existence in that lake they will hang around with the shoalfish. Now, all right, fishing for the shoalfish, you are playing a numbers game, but that is the type of fishing that I really enjoy. You know, there's nothing I like more than sitting behind my rods and watching the bobbins go up and down. And eventually, you know, every squirrel does find a nut, and there's always that chance that big one is going to come across your bait. And again, like the waters that I fish, they've got a high stock density. They're very pressured, and do you know what? The chance of seeing a carp in the margin is only going to happen when they're spawning, and you're not going to be fishing then anyway. So I can't physically see the fish that I'm fishing for. I can only apply the best method that I know to try and catch that particular fish. And I know, you know, I sort of have a little laugh and a joke as well and say it's a one-trick pony method. And to be honest, it is. You know, I turn up to a lake and I sort of rule out anything else. I know that I'm going to aim at that tree, at that distance, and that's where I'm going to fish. But there's more to it than just chucking 3 rods out. And, you know, knowing your limits as well with it. And you see a lot of people, they try it and, you know, they got rods sort of off the side, and even though it's a very, very easy method to get right because you are effectively casting 3 rigs in a straight line, it is also a method that you could get so wrong. So I find basically find the best spot that I feel I can possibly find in the peg that I'm fishing, and going to bed at night knowing that I've done the best I possibly can is all I can possibly do. And like I say, unless an opportunity presents itself where I can fish a different method and see the fish, then why would you not go fishing every time you go and use the method that you know you've got the most confidence in? It's the first syndicate that I've joined for 11 years now. It's been a long time coming. I've caught a lot of carp in between my last syndicate and now, but the reason I joined here is to catch carp like this. Coming into the winter, and fish like these keep coming along, absolutely phenomenal. You know what, it's nice to be fishing somewhere where I've been the only angler on the lake overnight. Absolutely awesome, and like I say, fish like this make it all the more rewarding.